Hello and welcome to the 34th episode of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is, where we talk about actresses who may have come close to earning Oscar nominations, but were ultimately overlooked, omitted, or for one reason or another just didn't have the votes to make it into the final lineup, and discussing why they may have deserved to get in and why they ultimately didn't. Each episode has its own theme presented as a double feature, and this week we are going to be covering two performances that won Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival, but were not even nominated at the Oscars. And my guest today, I'm always excited to have on the show, any of my shows really. He is a writer and former co-host of the Academy Queens podcast, who has joined me for various podcasts over the years. Welcome back, Brandon Stanwyck.
Hey, Kevin, it's great to be here. I'm glad to be exploring these two films that I haven't seen in a long time and have a lot of fondness for.
Yes, so much to unpack with everything that's going on in these movies. Let's just get into it. So I presented to my patrons here at And the Runner-Up Is a list of 15 Best Actress winning performances at Cannes that were not nominated at the Oscars. And the options were Julieta Messina in Knights of Cabiria, Rita Tushingham in A Taste of Honey, Kitty Wynn in The Panic in Needle Park, Susanna York in Images, Joanne Woodward in The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds, Isabelle Adjani in Possession, Norma Alejandro in The Official Story, Fernanda Torres in Love Me Forever or Never, Irene Jacob in The Double Life of Veronique, Kathy Burke in Nil by Mouth, Jean Duyen in Secret Sunshine, Charlotte Gainsbourg in Antichrist, Juliette Binoche in Certified Copy, Julianne Moore in Maps to the Stars, and Diane Kruger in the Fade. So many exciting options there, but the top vote getters were Isabelle Adjani and Julianne Moore. This was a very fun poll to track. Everyone got at least one vote, which is always nice. Isabelle Adjani, though, was by far the number one in a landslide, as you can probably imagine, with Julianne Moore in second with literally half of Isabelle's total, but still placed in second. And Julianne actually just barely beat out Julieta Messina by one vote. So once again, it just goes to show you, every vote counts. But before we delve into Isabelle Adjani and Julianne Moore, Brandon, I feel like when we think about Cannes, there's a certain image that comes to mind, especially in relation to performances by women that are recognized that often do not translate to Oscars. So just curious if you can speak to maybe that lack of correlation and the kinds of performances that tend to get recognition there as opposed to at the Oscars.
Yeah, I'd say, in generally speaking, my impression is that the jury there, has more taste than the Academy at large.
Yeah.
And so I think I tend to vibe a little bit more with the women who've been recognized at Cannes versus with the Academy. A few of these performances that were in your poll I really adore, like Susanna York in Images, I think is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte Gainsbourg in Antichrist is amazing. And Juliette Binoche in Certified Copy is a performance that has really grown on me over time. It's one that I think grows on you with repeated watches. Like the first time I watched Certified Copy, I was like, I don't get this. I'm not vibing with this. And then much later I watched again. I was like, this is just brilliant. Why they don't translate to the Oscars? I mean, if you look at the list of actresses who've won at Cannes and the performances that have translated to the Oscars, it tends to be the English speaking and largely American
Mm-hmm.
winners. A lot of the foreign language performances tend to not. Of course, there are some exceptions, obviously. But generally speaking, it's actresses like Sally Field and Jill Clayburgh and Meryl Streep who end up translating over. I think Rooney Mara is a recent-ish example around this same time
Mm-hmm.
as Maps to the Stars, but I guess Amelia Perez is kind of, it's not really American, but it is one that translated, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's an example, in my opinion, where there was not taste involved, but that's another
Mm-hmm.
matter. See, I guess that's pretty much how I see it correlating. How about you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Cannes juries are often looking for something new and fresh and unexpected and pushing the envelope. Plus, it being an international festival, there is often a much broader scope of performance that is being watched and considered. All of which is kind of the opposite of how Academy voters tend to operate. They do tend to prefer their people that they like and the narratives Whereas, certain juries, maybe they can get a little bit swept up in narrative, but much less so compared to the Oscars, which, love a campaign, love a narrative. And so if a performance is also in another language, as you said, or from an actress that mainstream industry folks haven't seen before, plus it's maybe in a movie that sort of diverts from those familiar kinds of conventional stories, it's an uphill battle more often than
Yeah,
not.
a lot of women suffering in these Cannes films, I would
Yeah,
also say. And maybe that's not the vibe that the Academy likes to go for
not
um,
always. Yeah.
throughout its history.
Yeah. There's a certain kind of suffering that is like
Mm,
something that is, a suffering wife, for example, in supporting
sure.
actress all over the place. But up to a certain limit, the suffering goes. But yeah, it's funny that there's actually less crossover now than there used to be, even though you would think with
Hmm.
the Academy becoming more diverse and international that there might be more Cannes winners in the acting categories that are crossing over. But like you said, the only Best Actress winner at Cannes to even get a nomination this decade is Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez. I guess Zoe Saldana too in supporting actress because they were in a joint win. But yeah, decade before, Rooney Mara for Carol was the only Oscar carryover the whole decade, and the decade before that, it was only Penelope Cruz and Voltaire. So,
Right.
and I think this is a good thing to some degree that they're not like codependent. I know it
Yeah.
tends to happen more with films themselves these days that win the Palme d'Or or the Grand Jury Prize that tend to overlap with Oscars in recent years, but kind of a curious lack of correlation for the acting winners.
I kind of like that. I feel like in
Yeah.
recent years, in like the past decade or so, a lot of the quote unquote precursors have just been falling in line,
Yeah.
and there's not as much disparity as there used to
Hmm.
be. And I kind of like the disparity. I like
Yeah.
the different jury pools having their own flavor.
Hmm.
And when a performance or a film magically aligns, it makes it more special. Now it seems every group is honoring the same group of movies. And I
Yeah.
find that kind of boring, to be
Yeah.
honest.
That's very true. And it's also worth mentioning that the jury changes every year. So it's not
Hmm.
like we're going to have like a pattern to necessarily recognize within this, but there is a kind of coincidental correlation with the types of performances that get nominated. But also, I think, too, like with international films, they don't even always come out in the same year in the US, or their release strategies are just not conducive to Oscar campaigns, which is the case for both of the performances we'll be discussing today, actually,
Hmm.
because neither of them were even eligible to be nominated for Oscars. But we will talk about them within the context of the years that they hypothetically would have come out and been eligible. Also, worth mentioning too, before we get into it, we are recording the day after the Cannes closing ceremony for 2026, so we can sort of congratulate Virginia Efira and Tao Okamoto from All of a Sudden for winning Best Actress there. We shall see if either of them translate to Oscars. The Oscars did appreciate Ryusuke Hamaguchi's previous film, Drive My Car, so perhaps a slight leg up there. But unless you have anything else, we can get into what we're here to talk about today.
Oh, yeah, let's dive right in.
Well, we're diving into the deep end here, starting first with Isabelle Adjani in Possession.
You're looking at me as if You're looking at me as if to tell me that I need you to fill me up, as if I'm an empty space. Well, I love you too, but what makes me go on is to know he'll return and I'll make him suffer and I'll hurt him and I'm betraying him, but this brings me small rewards. Well, but yet I can't exist by myself because I'm afraid of myself, because I'm the maker of my own evil.
So, luckily, first of all, with both of these actresses, we have talked about them on the Best Actor series, so I don't need to do a huge introduction for them, but to reorient us back to where Isabelle Adjani was at this point in her career, she had broken through for her performance in The Story of Adele H., for which she won numerous critics' prizes and earned an Oscar nomination at the age of 20, becoming at that time the youngest Best Actress nominee of all time in 1975. So, after such a splashy debut, she was bombarded with offers from Hollywood, but she was very judicious in her next steps after Adele H., working primarily with more respected auteurs like Roman Polanski for The Tenant, Walter Hill for The Driver, and Werner Herzog for Nosferatu the Vampire. And she also played Emily Bronte in The Bronte Sisters. Her time in Hollywood was not necessarily the greatest, which made her return to European film. And this leads us to Possession, where she worked with Andrzej Żuławski, the Polish director. So he was inspired to write this film following his divorce from his wife in 1976. He was overcome with depression and suicidal thoughts, and this writing process helped him to channel his feelings and write a film about the unbearable pain of separation and divorce. He was also inspired by his estrangement from his native Poland after one of his films was banned from the country. Plus, he thought of the split of West and East Berlin, too, as another metaphor for divorce. All of these elements were swirling during this pre-production process, and Isabelle Adjani was his number one choice for the lead female role. They also considered Judy Davis for this role, but after Judy was kind of uncertain about taking on such challenging material, Isabelle was locked and loaded and ready to take it on and confirmed for this part. And it was quite demanding for Isabelle, as we may get into possibly during our discussion. But to get into a summary, Possession is set in West Berlin and begins with an international spy named Mark, played by Sam Neill, who comes back after a mission and discovers that his wife, Anna, played by Isabelle Adjani, is desiring a separation. So Mark is blindsided by this and soon finds out that Anna has been cheating on him with Heinrich, this eccentric bohemian type played by Heinz Bennett. Mark and Anna also have a young son named Bob, and Anna feels tremendous guilt over the situation and what it may do for Bob. So after Anna goes away, Mark resolves to look after Bob all on his own. And one day when he goes to his elementary school, he meets a school teacher named Helen, who looks exactly like Anna and is played by Isabelle as well, except she has green eyes and is much sweeter and more doting than Anna, which kind of attracts Mark to her. Mark also hires a private investigator to find Anna. Meanwhile, Anna has been living in a new apartment where it's revealed that she's been tending to this grotesque sort of creature and is looking to make him complete, which involves killing men who enter her apartment, naturally. We eventually learn what Anna's purpose is in doing this, but as Anna explains, she experienced a break in her psyche with her darker side being unleashed, leading to, let's just say, a very chaotic series of events. Okay, so Brandon, this is a big one. Feels like one of those essential watches for actress lovers and horror fans as well. So I would love to know your relationship to Possession, any overall thoughts on the movie, and on Isabelle's performance here.
Well, I mean, thoughts on the movie. I mean, imagine you divorce your ex-husband and then he makes this in response. What a wild thing to do.
Rather than go to therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, men will do anything but go to therapy. This is a movie that I had been trying to see for so long. It was not easily accessible for the longest time. I had been reading about this movie for years, seeing clips floating around on like YouTube and social media for years. And it was only until a few years ago, I think it became available on like Shudder or the Criterion channel, that I was actually able to see it for the first time. Blown away, lived up to my expectations. Have not revisited it since, because it's not really a movie that I don't feel the need to rewatch it very often because it just doesn't feel like that kind of movie. Yeah. But it was nice to get back to it for this. It takes a lot out of you. And as you can see on screen, it takes a lot out of Isabelle Adjani. It's an exhausting movie emotionally. Like, I feel like I need to take a nap after it's over. And I can only imagine what she went through with this performance.
Yeah. Well, this is also where I can officially come forward and say that this was my first time watching Possession. I kind of built this movie up on a pedestal for so long, but also being slightly scared of watching it. And also, like you said, it wasn't really available very much until recently. So anyway, it never felt like the right time to put it on, I guess. And everything I heard, that might surprise people, but yeah, it's true. This was a first time watch, and yeah, this is actressing on a whole other level. I mean, I loved Isabelle in The Story of Adele H, and she would have gotten my vote that year at the Oscars. I loved her in Camille Claudel. I loved her in Queen Margot, and like so many things she had done. Always thinking of her as this very fierce actress who really could command the screen. But now, watching this, I'm like, okay, this is what Isabelle Adjani can really do when she is given the freedom to just let it all hang out there. She is so open to pushing herself to the absolute limit in a way that actually reminded me of, perhaps you'll appreciate this too, I thought of Liv Ullmann in her performance in Face to Face.
So did I.
Yeah, where it's just like pure naked emotion on the screen, sometimes looking directly at the camera and just being like so bracing. You want to look away at times, but also you can't help but watch, which kind of is what this movie is in many ways.
Face to Face definitely feels like a stepping stone to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting those vibes during the breakdown.
Yes, very that.
Yeah.
But there's also such intention too for me in her performance, even within those wilder moments, that you never feel like you're losing your grip on her, and you can just feel this immense pressure and guilt of her situation at all times. But I think you can also see, kind of as the film goes on, how much of a perverse sort of pleasure she's taking and being able to reclaim some control in her life, and is going out and building a life for herself away from Mark and being able to like build this creature into her ideal partner, essentially. And so, yeah, I find that the film and through her performance, it really shows the emotional violence of a relationship and making the sort of internal pain more external in quite violent ways that are disturbing, but also there's such like a frankness to and an honesty in it that you can't help but be sort of fascinated by it.
Yeah, it's very upsetting to watch, but it's also a performance that I think sucks in all of your sympathy, because like it looks like you're watching someone dying when she's performing. I'm not entirely sure how she does it. She like taps into something and goes on to another level. And it's just like one of the rawest performances I think that has ever been captured on film.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about the subway scene in particular, I mean, I read that they only did that twice, and I can understand why. There's no way she could do that 10, 12 times at that same level and come out okay.
Yeah.
So I also read that Johnny had said in an interview that that's a performance that she could have done when she was young, because she wouldn't have had the emotional vulnerability and the willingness to do it at an older age.
Yeah.
So the stars truly aligned with getting her in this role at this particular time, at this director's particular time of depression and anger and all the other things that he was feeling that led to him telling this story.
Yeah.
It's a miraculous movie.
And a miraculous performance. And it doesn't shock me to learn that she really struggled after the fact to kind of get over this and all of the emotions that it took out of her. She even went through a depressive stage as well, having to channel all of these emotions. And yeah, like I said, it reminds me of that kind of just raw vulnerability of a Liv Ullmann, of a Shelley Duvall in The Shining kind of thing, where it's like, how can you move on with your life after doing a performance like this?
I don't know that you can.
Yeah.
Because I think I also read that like Sam Neill had like emotional problems after this was over, and he's not quite giving the same performance, obviously, but he is also definitely going through it along with her.
Yeah.
Both performances are really challenging and feed into one another in a really like sick, twisted kind of way.
Yeah. I also hope that kid who played Bob is okay too, because that's a lot to go through for a child.
Yeah, I hope he didn't really drown.
Yeah, I don't think he did. I think we would have read about that. But
yeah.
So just to go through the movie a little bit, her first introduction is just already in a state of like hyper neurotic, just like this bundle of nerves, very uncertain about the state of their relationship. When Mark comes home, they get naked together in bed, but they don't actually have intimacy. And, you know, she just looks like she's shell-shocked, or like she knows something is not right here, but she can't quite put her finger on why or know exactly how to verbalize it per se, but she knows that something is off. And so they're both kind of stuck. I love just the introduction here of this sort of confusion of emotion there, in not really being able to express how she feels, but she knows that something has changed. and that she can't be with him physically or even emotionally. So she just kind of needs the space to think. And, you know, they have a little dialogue about like whether one of them is cheating. She denies it, but in reality, as we see, she's been having this affair with Heinrich, and it's just very difficult for her to express that she wants to end things with Mark, because they obviously have Bob together and they have this family, because that kind of complicates things. And so you're kind of introduced right away in a state of like her being in this very heightened place, which doesn't really ever tamp down to anything of like her normal state before any of this. So it's interesting to kind of watch a performance from the lens of just being introduced to her like already deeply emotional, you know?
Yeah, the movie gives her a pretty big challenge in that it
Yeah.
doesn't ever really show us the before time. Like we don't get
Yeah.
flashes to what they used to be as a couple, or like what brought them together and what
Right.
how they may have been happy in the past. We're thrown right into like the end of their marriage. Like everything is
Yeah.
already dissolving or has dissolved, and Isabelle Adjani is tasked with conveying everything in her face, in her body language, in her tone, and we just need to go along with it. And when the movie starts, when we're first introduced to her, I feel like the initially we may be on Mark's side to begin with, because when we first meet her, she's rather cold and
Right.
off-putting, and I could see how audiences could easily think, oh, she's just a bitch. But then as the movie unravels and she unravels and we understand a little bit more piece by piece what's going on, we have a better ish understanding of what she's going through.
Yeah.
And I think
Ish.
it's her ish. Yeah, it's her performance, this like roller coaster of emotions. That really paints a picture of where she is as a person and how she feels trapped in this marriage and her lack of agency and autonomy just in life, in this
Mm-hmm.
marriage, in this place that is literally divided by a wall right outside their window.
Yeah.
It's a super challenging performance to pull off, and I think she does it beautifully.
Yes. And to that point, even more challenging than you would kind of think of it as, because you can think of obviously all of the painful stuff in the subway tunnel sequence and just the extremity of the emotions. But then there's kind of like you're saying, the having to fill in the blanks of where they may have been up to this point, and that would lead her to this, that you also have to think into consideration. Keep in mind, she's only like 25 when she's performing this. So having that kind of maturity at that age is still just like, all of that is so impressive to me that, like you said, I don't know how she did it. But eventually she does come clean to him about this affair, and he gets angry with her. And I really love how she kind of tries to patch things up a little bit by saying, like, her one quote where she says, "No one is good or bad, but if you want, I'm the bad one. And if I knew he existed in this world, I would have never had Bob with you," which is very cutting. But there's a real ferocity there that suggests that like she really means it, and she wants to just like not complicate things any further. She doesn't want to hash it out or compromise or like have him try to persuade her back to him in a way. Like, this just needs to end. And in order for that to happen, it's like, I need to make you not want to be with me. So she's kind of suggesting like, if I had never met you, my life would be much better and I wouldn't have never had Bob. Like, it's quite brutal and cold. And an actress like Isabelle Adjani is very good at brutal and cold.
Yeah, it's kind of her specialty.
Yes.
That scene is so hard to watch. I mean, obviously, I don't have kids. I've never been married, but just listening to her say these words that if I could change everything and erase you completely from my life, I would be better for it, is just
Mm-hmm.
so hurtful to watch play out on screen.
Yeah.
And I think that's still a time when we're sort of like sympathizing more so with Sam Neill, with
Yeah.
Mark in that moment, because it's before we really start getting into Anna's head. But Isabelle Adjani just punches and stabs so well with her words and with her glares, and it's just crazy to watch.
Thank you for listening to this preview of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup is and become a patron. Only $5 a month will get you access to bonus episodes, exclusive polls, and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.